you. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for being here to honor Harlan's memory. And I wanted to thank Charlotte and the family for bringing this here so that we could love on you and just be a part. So, yeah, thank you very much, all of you guys. And so I'm going to come back and talk later, but for now, Amy's going to come and talk. And
she's going to talk. I know this kind of goes without saying, but just please bear with me. The tears are. Thank you. Is that better? You're welcome. Oh my gosh. Why do they let brothers in the front row? Harlan E. Thompson, known as Harney or Harn by a number of his childhood friends and family, of Cedar Park, Texas, passed away on September 18th at the age of 76. He was born on May 10th, 1945, in Aberdeen, Washington, to Lois Irwin and was raised by the man he called Dad, Marshall Thompson. Harlan fell out of a very tall tree at the age of 12 while playing treetop tag. And if you listen to how my dad would tell it, these trees were like 50 to 60 feet tall, which is just, what? With his 3 buddies and broke his back. That's a huge shock. Less than a month later, he fell out of a cherry tree, landing on a picket fence with his chin, leading to numerous stitches, a lovely lifelong scar on his face, and a very angry mother. He graduated from Moe Clips High School on the Washington coast in 1963 and had perfect attendance throughout high school. As I say that, though, please do keep in mind that the students at his high school were allowed to leave school to go clam digging as long as they signed themselves out and then signed themselves back in. Harlan also participated in a number of extracurricular activities, including student government, 4 years of football, and 1 year of boxing. That was a big shock to all of his kids. We were like, wait, what, Dad boxed? That's pretty cool. He made a number of wonderful and at times painful memories with his lifelong buddies, Jim Westby, Rod Parker, and Lewis Stewart. Harlan attended Grays Harbor Community College and worked at Harbor Wholesale and Pay and Save in Aberdeen until he joined the Navy in 1967. Unbeknownst to him, he was prone to seasickness and returned from his tour a good 50 pounds lighter than when he left. Yeah, no thanks. Throughout his career, Harlan enjoyed many sales positions in various industries in the Centralia and Staten, Oregon areas, and while managing his first Safeway in Aberdeen, his store received commendation for highest sales per square foot on the West Coast. One of his lifelong dreams was to own and operate his own store, and in June 1986, that became a reality when Harlan and Charlotte purchased Mary's Corner Market, which they owned and operated for 10 years. Harlan was very active with Kiwanis, Pope's Place, Rotary, Centralia Council, served as mayor of Centralia, and also served on the Riverside Fire Authority for a number of years. While serving as a commissioner with the RFA, he was always the first to volunteer at the firehouse, at the Southwest Washington Fair, and many other activities in which the RFA was involved. Over the years, Harlan played on a men's softball team, played basketball with guys from the State Patrol, tennis, and enjoyed swimming laps at the community pool in Centralia. He won a car, and was very proud of the fast as lightning Ford Festiva, which was driven for thousands of miles before being put out to pasture. Harlan loved to fish, and you could find him on lakes and rivers all over western Washington, on the Cowlitz, Toutle, and Hump Tulips rivers, as well as on Lake Mayfield and Rife Lake. Harlan and Charlotte were members of Jackson Prairie Church until moving to Centralia in 2003, where they created close bonds with their church family at Calvary Chapel of Centralia. Harlan and Charlotte moved to Cedar Park, Texas in 2019 with their Shih Tzu, Mitzi, to enjoy the Texas sunshine in their sunset years, and while they were there, they became fast friends with their beloved community at Calvary Chapel, Leander. Harlan is survived by his loving wife of 55 years, Charlotte, and 4 children, Marshall and his sweetie Tony of Cedar Park, Texas, me, Amy, and my husband Scott of Troutdale, Oregon, Nate, his wife Denise of Napavine, and Andrew and his sweetheart, Kelly. Oh, there you are. In addition to his wife and children, Harlan is survived by his sister Eileen Owens of Napavine and brother Gary Thompson of Sacramento, California. 9 grandchildren, Brittany, Ryan, Cam, Cameron, Tyler, Caitlin, Madeline, Hayden, and Logan, plus 4 great-grandchildren. And also a number of cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends will also miss him dearly. So, a couple years ago, Mom and Dad returned from a trip to Texas to visit Marshall and announced that they were moving to Texas. And I'm guessing there was a lot of, whoa, wait, what? It was a big move after living so much of their lives here in Southwest Washington. And the reason I'm even bringing this up is I want you to know that while they were in Texas, they were loved, and they were loved so very well. Marshall is one of the best men that I know, and Dad was in the best of hands. He had some great times and made some wonderful memories in Texas. He caught his first bass, had quality times with his grandsons Ryan and Tyler, as well as his great-granddaughter Brooklyn. He went to lunch with his new buddy at church, Jerry, spent time with the men in his church at the men's breakfast, even hosting one a month or so ago, and got in some good long talks with Marsh on their trips to and from Dad's various doctor's appointments or over a beer by the pool. After his last stroke, Dad seemed to have lost some of his verbal filter. So it was sometimes interesting and exciting to see what was going to come out of his mouth. You just never knew. So a couple weeks ago, when we met with Aaron, the pastor of Calvary Chapel, preparing for Dad's service there, he told us the story of Dad spontaneously singing the hymn, "I Come to the Garden Alone," at a recent men's breakfast. It was his favorite hymn. And while the spontaneity of it probably wasn't a surprise, again, that filter, the preciousness of Dad's vulnerability resonated with those men. Aaron concluded his story by telling us how one of the men had honored Dad the morning he left this earth for heaven by pulling out a harmonica and playing that hymn at the men's prayer breakfast. I'll tell you too, that church was full at Dad's service last Saturday. They'd only been attending that church for 18 months. That's loving and loving well. Dad was in really good hands in Texas. So on that note, would you please stand and join me in singing Dad's favorite hymn, "I Come to the Garden Alone"?
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. Walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. And he walks with me and he talks with me, and he joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Oh, Dad. Ladies and gentlemen, monkeys and mules, I come before you to stand behind you to tell you of something of which I know nothing. Next Tuesday, which is Good Friday, there will be a mother's and daughter's tea for fathers only. Admission is free. Pay at the door, pull up a seat, and sit on the floor. Dad said that a trillion times. And it was his opportunity to break the ice whenever he was nervous before he talked to somebody. He said, Nathan, this is something that I say in order to approach crowds. So I'm grateful for you letting me share that with you today. Nate, or Nathan, depending on how long you've known me and my family, people have asked, how's your mom and dad? Or equally as often, you're Harlan's son? How's your dad doing? What an incredible compliment. And to me, it's always meant that you appreciated my dad. When people have asked, it's also meant that it was valuable to spend a few moments with you for a catch-up. Out of respect. That inquiry, how's your dad? I think this question posed so many times with such sincerity by so many people related solely by one common thread. They, at some point, whether by choice or by virtue of being socially cornered by a smiling guy in a pink polo shirt, it happened. It might have happened to you too. It's okay. We're struck by Dad's kind smile and beautiful character. My dad was the most innocent man I've ever met. He was born in the last weeks of World War II. Aunt Eileen and my dad spent their first young years shielding each other, along with my grandmother, against psychological and physical trauma. Before my grandmother met the man, and we know as Grandpa Marshall Thompson. Thank God for Grandpa Marshall. At that point, Dad's life stabilized. Dad grew up humbly, and there wasn't a ton, but there was enough. Dad reflected on these years with a common refrain: we were rich in love. This was the way Dad described family life. When I was young, I recall asking, Dad, are we rich? Trying to measure my place in the physical world. Yes, son, he'd say with that warm smile. We're rich in love. Ah, Dad, that's not what I meant. Unfortunately, he had some time to win me over with this concept. What a lesson. Like this refrain, he repeated the same stories and dad jokes over and over. It's inherited. Denise and I will be driving past something and I'll begin, did I tell you? Yes, Denise will say, you're just like your dad. But Dad did tell the same stories with the same jokes. As I grew older, I realized that when Dad told a familiar story, he was able to generate a familiar response. He was able to determine how you were doing by your responses. He knew you'd heard that story or knew the punchline. That was the point. It worked both ways. He was making sure you were okay. To some extent, I believe, he was reassuring himself that all was right in the world because he had known a time when things weren't okay. If Dad wasn't sure you were comfortable or knew what to talk about with him, he never skipped an opportunity to relate what was dear to him. You were going to hear that Marshall was doing great, Amy was still his favorite daughter, and Nathan was still the most handsome of the boys, just ask my wife and my mom and my sister. And finally, that Andrew may some point settle down and grow a family. He was hopeful. But wait, there's more, and Dad was going to share it with you. Dad loved to learn about you. Dad had a fantastic knack of reciting the things that he saw and knew about other people to people who may not have cared. But Dad cared. Dad saw the best in people and rarely fed the rumor mill. Dad spoke in low tones about others who had encountered hard times. It weighed heavy on his heart. But again, if you were shy and you allowed a few empty moments in the conversation, Dad had another grandchild of his to praise while you thought about it. Dad sincerely hoped to lovingly infect as many people as possible, one at a time usually, with the warmth and the love that he hoped the world could know. He knew full well that there was cruelty and hardship out there. Dad's experience is translated to us in unusual ways. While Mom kept the wooden spoon industry afloat in the 1980s by splitting them across my backside, Dad refused to raise a firm hand against us boys' rear end, even when Andrew and I required a decisive correction. Seeing my dad in that predicament was enough for Andrew and me. My brother and I learned to get along when Dad was at home because Dad's reaction was way worse than Mom's wooden spoons. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you was absolute when Dad said it. Dad committed entirely to our family in the best way he knew how. Good old-fashioned hard work and putting in the hours. He was successful in an early growing Safeway grocery store chain in the 1970s, and the company trusted him to manage startup stores as Safeway expanded through Southwest Washington. The money was good, of course, but Dad saw that corporate life was impersonal and didn't care much about family stability. Dad had done a lot for the company, but when he realized the cost, Dad decided that he was a family man, not a company man. This is one of the lessons he never had to tell. He demonstrated it to us. Of course, Dad absolutely loved the social aspect of Safeway, both for employees and customers. And when the opportunity to purchase the store at Mary's Corner, of course he took it. Mary's Corner merged the things that were important to Dad, providing for a family and the chance to take a small grocery business and make it successful on his own terms, including honest personal interaction, leaving out the corporate information. The store, of course, demanded long hours and a heavy burden on Mom, but we were comfortable, and after 10 years, in 1996, the store sale provided a financial reward for the family's sacrifice and efforts. Dad believed in the American dream, and he made sure that his business was honorable and personable. Now it's been 25 years since Mom and Dad sold the store. I'm still grateful to hear from former customers, "I kept going in because Harlan was such a great guy to talk to." Dad knew customers were on their way to or from work. Oftentimes, it was dangerous in the woods or on shift with local law enforcement. This was a point of pride for him. Mostly, Dad was honored by the simple fact that people found enough value in our store to do some business with us. He loved that about you. He loved that about you. You, the customer, would stay for a minute or an hour while you shared something about you. And of course, he was thrilled to share with you the latest events in the Thompson family. I think that if Mom hadn't insisted on Dad charging for the coffee, he'd let it go for a chat. I remember it clearly. It was a clean quarter for a small cup, 23 cents plus 2 cents tax. The cup, the creamer, the sugar, and the time it took to prep the coffee, not even counting the time it took my mom to go down to the wholesaler to purchase all the stuff, there's no money in it. It wasn't even a lost leader. Dad didn't try and make it up anywhere else. He didn't care. Dad would have given away that coffee for the opportunity to know what you've been up to or what was going on in your life for that day. I know this because I let him watch that. I watched him let that coffee through the door. And if the same customers would come in during my shift, and I'll admit it, if I saw Dad let coffee walk with a customer, I'd note it and I'd do the same. This was Dad's business model, and I still believe in the magic of it. Something noticeable happened to Dad in the early 1990s, and I'm fairly certain that it was grandkids. I think Dad realized that Marshall's sons, Ryan and Cameron, were growing up fast while he was meeting the demands of the store. Amy and Marshall had moved out. Andrew and I were growing up quickly in the solid efforts of Mom and Dad to attend our sport and school events represented a losing battle. Day by day, the missed ball games and fishing opportunities seemed to strengthen his resolve. So after Mom and Dad sold the store, Dad really missed anything. It was a welcome shift in my high school years. What a blessing. Andrew and I were certainly better for it. This carried through with my kids, Dad's grandkids, Madeline and Hayden. Thank you, Mom, for helping him to see this. And of course, Dad was there. If you're a Napa Vine fan, you would have seen him in the bright orange Tiger colors, and you couldn't miss him. In the gym, on the softball field, or out in the football field for sporting games, sometimes even when the kids weren't even playing. Dad's jokes. How do elephants hide in cherry trees? They paint their toenails red. Have you ever seen an elephant in a cherry tree? Works, doesn't it? Dad served. I'm not just talking about his Navy service. Dad was at his best when the work he was doing was entirely altruistic. Dad loved participating with Rotary and Kiwanis, and he had nothing but high praise for the quality of fellow community leaders with whom he served. Dad was elected to serve on the Centralia City Council, and through events, and to his family's stunned surprise, Dad found himself as the council's choice to lead as the Centralia City mayor. I've always imagined that the council selection process was a bit of a procedural hot potato, but Dad gripped hard on the mayorship with bravery and a smile. He did his best, and he was proud of the work done. Dad, after all, didn't have the energy to match the younger candidates, and politics tends to get vicious quickly anyway. Vicious was never Dad's style. Dad would have loved the chance to work with the city council again, but after prostate cancer, followed by 2 strokes, he found that the relatively low-key Riverside Fire Authority offered Dad the civic involvement without the crazy politics. Dad thoroughly enjoyed his term with Riverside, and we're glad they were patient with him in the past years. Thank you, Chief. Dad shared fishing with me early, and it stuck. Even as a rebellious teen, I never balked at the offer to spend time on the water with Dad. Dad knew that if he got me to get a line in the water, the teenager in me would open up and we could just catch up for a while. We solved many of the world's problems many times over while on the Cowlitz, Mayfield, Rife, Tilton, Carlisle Lake, among others. We slayed the rainbow trout and brought home our share of cutthroat. But later in the 1990s, the stocks of salmon and steelhead waned, our luck plummeted. In fact, Denise, my wife, often accused Dad and I of doing everything under the sun other than actually going fishing. Denise's dad, Ted, is one of the most prolific fishermen I've ever met. So Denise knew what she was talking about. Dad and I resolved this discontinuity by reinforcing that we weren't exactly intent on fishing, or we were intent on fishing, but not exactly catching. Denise's sensibilities notwithstanding, Dad and I didn't give a hoot whether or not we caught anything. I'm grateful that my dad knew there was more to fishing than catching. About 10 years ago, we took a trip with Dad on the lake with the kids, and we fished until we had our fill of fun, and it was time to get off the water. We trailered the boat. Dad mentioned casually that he wasn't feeling great, planned to take a nap that afternoon. Wasn't that unusual until later on, Mom called us and told that Dad was in an ambulance and on his way to the hospital. Mom and I were allowed to go in the ER. This was before COVID. So the staff were trying to determine exactly what caused Dad's rapid decline, while Mom and I were trying to help them piece together the previous 24 hours. At some point, Dad regained consciousness, and the staff asked him to provide his name. Dad, being Dad, groggily replied, "Me? I'm Jose." No way, Jose. It was one of the things he said. It just kind of came out. Mom shrieked and nearly fell over with despair on my arm. I can remember it clearly. Upon hearing my mother, Dad regained focus, and with as much dignity as he could muster from that rolling bed, he identified himself. I'm not Jose. I'm Harlan Thompson. Mom tried to use her water bottle as a weapon on Dad. I restrained her. Harlan, Mom bellowed, "You don't do that to me. You don't scare me like that." The rest of us in that ER about fell over laughing. Dad kept his sense of humor even in rough times. Dad was a classic romantic, and no collection of anecdotes relating to my dad is anywhere near complete without an explanation of how much my dad loved my mom. They met on a blind date. Thank you for being here. My heart's full seeing everybody here. In fact, it may fill up my heart so much it comes out my eyeballs. They met in a blind date in the mid-1960s, and Dad told me numerous times that he knew without a doubt that my mom was the one for him at first sight. While Mom may disagree, I don't remember a missed anniversary, a birthday, or a Mother's Day. Of course, this isn't necessarily the measure of love, and I understand that. However, I was fortunate to observe the multitude of simple, loving gestures, sincerity, the smiles, the warm gazes, kind words, the wholly meant I love yous between my dad and Mom. I can and I should go on. Calling Dad's whole of person committed love For my mom, epic is to understate it. I can only express how grateful I am to have been the beneficiary of lifelong love and devotion from Mom. From, will you marry me, to Dad's final loving moments. I told you earlier things began to change for my dad when grandkids Ryan and Cameron arrived in the early 1990s while Dad was still investing long hours at the store. This was also the time that I began to see Dad's legacy and smile and charm in those grandsons. Of course, I've seen Dad's legacy in my own children. We saw it in Madeline here in the last few years when she decided to serve the underserved in Cambodia and the Philippines with youth ministry. And we hear it in the way my son wears his heart on his sleeve and shares with me how much it hurts him to hear that innocent people in the community are enduring hard times. Man, that heart. Now, at this point, it occurs to me that I have a lot more to say about Dad, so what I think it might be best is that as long as we can get in an agreement with Pastor Ben, I'd like everybody to take a few minutes and turn on your cell phones and call family, work, and everybody else, because I've got a lot. I'm just teasing. I'm wrapping it up. Dad would have loved that. He would have loved that. He would have howled. He would have loved that. Oh, friends, family. How's your dad? I know I'll get that question, and I'm not scared of it. The word still hasn't gotten out to everybody. It'll sting for a long time. How's your dad? Dad's at peace. He loved my mother to the last. She was there with him as he slept this earth, and we're grateful for peaceful mercy. How's your dad? I hope to hear people ask that about my dad for a long time. I think you'll agree with me that my dad's life is honored and his legacy shows that. All you need to do is take a look around at those here today and listen to friends and family share their tender memories. How's your dad? I hope you all agree with me that my dad did real well. Thank you. Okay. Mom and Dad had a heartfelt song, and it's an oldie but a goodie. It was something that was special to Mom and Dad. It's John Denver and Placido Domingo. It's called Perhaps Love.
Perhaps love is like a resting place, shelter from the storm. It exists to give you comfort, it is there to keep you warm. And in those times of trouble, when you are most alone, the memory of love will bring you home.
Perhaps love is like a window, perhaps an open door. It invites you to come closer, it wants to show you more. And even if you lose yourself and don't know what to do, the memory of love will see you through.
Oh, love to some is like a cloud, to some as strong as steel.
For some a way of living, for some a way to feel.
And some say love is holding on, and some say letting go, and some say love is everything. Some say that
Perhaps love is like the ocean, full of conflict, full of pain, like a fire when it's cold outside, thunder when it rains. If I should live forever and all my dreams come true, my memories of love will be all.
All right. Well, the family has requested that I say something about the faith and also to share my experience with Harlan. But apparently, of course, as you hear more stories, you understand that you didn't know somebody well enough or long enough. But what I knew was pretty fun. So I'm going to start with my experience with Harlan, and then I'll talk about Harlan's faith. The challenge when it comes to talking about people's character is my position as a pastor. And a pastor's perspective of someone's character can be very different from the experience of other people, simply because so many people behave so differently when they talk to a pastor, even as young as me. I've often wondered if they speak to me that way because they think it's me they'll have to stand before on Judgment Day. Trust me, a pastor's perspective is not that important. But I mention that because I don't think Harlan cared much about what I thought, which was a great relief to me. A great relief to me. Fake people are rather exhausting. Harlan appeared to be himself around me, flaws and everything. So I respected him, and it allowed me to enjoy his company, even though I knew something was up his sleeve. Okay, but I enjoyed him, and I enjoyed his harassment. Not too long after Harlan and Charlotte started attending Calvary Chapel, he took me out to lunch because he said he wanted me to know what kind of riffraff was in the church. And in jest, he couched his invitation with a warning. And I'm drawn to excitement and danger, so I took up the adventure. To my disappointment, no injuries were incurred. But I did get to hear Harlan's story, and I'm sure some of you have as well. But it was after lunch, I think, that we had learned that we were both clearly comfortable with giving each other a hard time. But Harlan always got the upper hand. Now, typically, it's the person with the microphone that gets the upper hand. But that wasn't the case with Harlan. I don't know what it was about him. But he would both compliment and correct me in the same breath. And it was usually immediately after I was done teaching. It would go something like this. During a sermon, I had said something like this. I would say, let me be honest with you. Well, afterwards, Harlan approached me and said, I like coming here because you don't put me to sleep. That's sort of a compliment. But then he said, why do you say, let me be honest with you? Weren't you honest before? Shouldn't you always be honest? And then he said, you shouldn't say that. So about a year later, I said it again from the pulpit. And the moment I did, I knew that I was going to get it. And I did. Here he came. I knew what he was going to say, and he did. But he added a threat the last time. He said, if you say that one more time, I'm going to leave the church. And he did. He moved to Texas. But I didn't actually say it again. I purposefully altered the figure of speech just to bug Harlan. I said, can I be frank with you? He couldn't take it anymore. And the thing that made it so hurtful was Charlotte went with him. Unbelievable. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Harlan. I did. Yeah. His love for people, his sincerity, and his genuine disposition. And one of the things I think that I appreciated most about Harlan was his straight talk. If he disagreed with you, there was no wondering about it. There wasn't. And when he did, it wasn't divisive. It wasn't mean-spirited. You know, he told you not to vent his feelings, but he believed that his thoughts on an issue would contribute to a better outcome, not for selfish reasons, but for everyone else. He was out for everyone else, for their gain. Yeah, we need more of that, men of character. But more important than Harlan's character was his dependence on Christ. I believe that's what shaped his character. So in the spirit of Harlan's straight talk, I want to share his faith with you because nothing mattered more on September 18th than Harlan's trust in the Son of God who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own special people. That is a citation from the Apostle Paul out of Titus 2, verse 14, which I'd like to address in Harlan's absence today. In the passage, it says that Jesus gave himself to redeem us, that is the believer, from every lawless deed. So, three things. And I'm not trying to give you a three-point sermon. There's just 3 points in the text. Okay? 3 essential concepts: lawlessness, redemption, and sacrifice. The Bible always assumes that people are lawless. That is, in relation to God, they are sinful and rebellious. It's no shot in the dark. Look around you. Look in the mirror. Just take a look at me. It's everywhere. But here in this passage, it actually assumes that God's people are lawless. A thing that God seeks to remedy by his grace, but nonetheless, his people are morally broken like the rest of humanity. In fact, while speaking to the believers, the Apostle John said, "If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us." 1 John 1:8. So ultimately, the believer is no better than anyone else, but the reality is they are infinitely better off than most everyone else. Not because they turned over a new leaf and changed their ways. It's not because they sobered up. It's not because of any good quality in themselves or any good things they do. They're just as rotten as the rest of humanity. But if they are infinitely better off than most everyone else, and it's not because they're good people or because of good things they do, why are they better off? That's really what this passage is addressing. In many places in the Bible, we are told that Jesus redeemed the believer. And the word redeem literally means to purchase, to make a payment. Oftentimes in the Bible, it uses a variation of the same word that means to purchase out of slavery. To purchase out of slavery. Jesus bought his people to remove them from slavery. Slavery to what? Well, Jesus told us it was slavery to sin and its consequences. But the currency used to purchase his people was not the typical money paid for one's freedom. Speaking to a group of believers, the Apostle Peter said this. He said, "Understand that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, like silver or gold, from your aimless conduct, but you were redeemed with the precious blood of Christ." And Paul said the same thing, just in different terms in our original passage. He said that Jesus gave himself for us in order to redeem us. He's saying that Jesus sacrificed himself. So Christ and his blood is the currency for the soul's redemption applied to everyone who trusts in him. Only the believer enjoys his benefits. And for example, when someone is redeemed by the Son of God, they fall into a category called the blessed. The blessed. Paul said it this way: "Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never hold against him." Romans 4:8. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never hold against him. You see, if Jesus did indeed redeem his people from every lawless deed, there is nothing to hold against them. That's to be blessed. That is truly better off. But how did it happen? Well, by giving himself for his people, Jesus was actually suffering for their lawlessness, for their sin, their disobedience to God. All of their guilt, all of their disobedience, the scriptures say, was held against him. He suffered for what we did, so that God would not hold it against us. That's why the believer is infinitely better off than most everyone else. When Harlan humbled himself and put his trust in Jesus for his eternal redemption, God forgave him. And in the place of Harlan's rebellion, God attributed Jesus' perfect righteousness. And so Harlan is in God's presence today, not because of the good things he did or because of some goodness in himself. Harlan is there today because Jesus redeemed him from every lawless deed, and he purified him. Harlan is better off than most everyone else because of Jesus. Now, if Harlan were here today, I would say something like this, just to mess with him. Can I be honest with you? And in honor of Harlan, I'll just give it to you straight. You will not escape judgment to enjoy God's benefits unless you repent and turn your life over to Christ through faith. His redemption is available to you, but it can only be applied to you when you trust him. Unbelief is a rejection of God's redemption. If you reject him, he will reject you, and you will be held responsible for your own lawlessness. I would like you to be better off than most everyone else. So let me conclude with Paul's words from Romans 10:9. He said, "If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved." That's giving it straight. And that's how it is. Let me turn over the mic to those who've been selected to share, and then I'll close with a benediction. All right? Would you like to hold it, or do you want it? Okay. I'm afraid of them too.
What's that?
I said I'm afraid of microphones too.
Even though you wear one all the time
Yeah.
there. Crap. Well, I'm better off already than the last one. So when we were down at Cedar Park, I was a bumbling idiot because of that bumbling idiot. I love that guy to death. My favorite part about my dad is everything. The one thing, when you left, my dad, you always knew that he loved you. Whether it was the first time you walked into his life or last, even for like 2 or 3 seconds, you always knew that he loved you no matter who you were. Every time I walked out of a room, my dad made sure to always tell me that he loved me and he loved you no matter who you were. So much. Crap. I mean, I'm supposed to be the one that tells you all the funny stuff about Pops. I can go on for days. I see some of my friends in the back there that, ranging from, sorry, Dad would be making fun of me like, "Are you a pig? Why are you snorting up there?" Pops can make a room light up like no other. But one thing that he is definitely always known for is his popcorn. For God's sakes, popcorn. Dad always had that giant white bowl of popcorn sitting next to him. That's all my friends really wanted to go over to my house was for the popcorn. Loaded it with Crisco and put some Johnny's seasoning salt, which yes is the best seasoning salt in the world. But like Nathan said earlier, he was always loud and rambunctious at games and stuff like that. Always. You always heard him in the crowds with his bright orange stuff. He's always proud of us, always going to games and stuff like that. But his filter, like Nathan said earlier, basically everybody, once you knew him, his filter really started going away. He didn't have one anymore. Well, as I was going through, this is the last little section I'm going to say. I can go on for days and days. But we were going through his phone and going through his old text messages, and some of them that he sent, some he didn't. I sent some. I don't know if I sent some to you guys or not. If you did, I was the one who sent them. Anyway, it sounded like it was a insurance individual or something like that, and the person types in, "Hey Harlan, this is such and such from such and such contract, or I know that we were going to get you a contract for your insurance," and he responds back with, I don't even remember the exact words anymore, but it was something to the point of, "I signed a contract with somebody else, you did not win." And it was just like, just hearing my dad say it in his head, like, "This is going to sound great to you." And the person was really nice. They responded back with, "Thank you very much and have a blessed day." And I'm just like, what did Dad say in his head after that? I don't know. But thank you so much for coming out. Seriously, seeing so many of you guys here just means the world to me. And he would love to see you guys all right now too. So thank you.
For many of you that may not know me, I'm a brother-in-law to Harlan. Harn, we always called him. I remember when I met Harn, I lived at Wenatchee with my brother over there. Eileen was living over there working, and we met at a baseball game and started dating and wanted to meet her parents, and they still live down at Capelas. So we went down one weekend to meet them. And I always remember the first meeting with Harn. After meeting, I don't remember what day it was, probably that same day, we went out and he was showing me around the big town of Capelas. And, I don't know, back to his house, and there was a basketball goal there. And he wanted to know, well, you want to shoot some baskets? And well, I played basketball a little bit in high school, and I was a point guard, but I didn't do much shooting. I did most of the pointing. And I don't know, I stepped back and dribbled the ball and shot. I made probably a three-pointer now, just swish. He was really impressed with that. He said, "Boy, you are a basketball player." So I didn't shoot anymore after that. I didn't want to ruin it. He said, "Boy, you are a basketball player, aren't you?" "No, I'm not." But we just had a lot of fun visiting. I remember him saying, I don't know what period it was, but we'd been there for a while, and he was pretty protective of his big sister. And I remember him saying, "You'll be okay if you ever marry my sister." Well, we did become good friends after we were married, and then later on he and Charlotte were married, and we were friends. We visited a lot, became close, and we lived at Napavine then, and then they moved from the Holcomb, Aberdeen area to Napavine, and our kids, Charlotte and and Nathan were fairly close in age to Sean and Shelley, our daughters, and so we only lived a couple miles apart, so we became very close, visited together all the time. And of course, as time goes along, families grow and begin to split. Why we didn't have as many get-togethers, but I do remember we almost always, well, we always had Thanksgiving at our house because we had a big house and had lots of room. And always lots of food, of course, you know how Thanksgiving is. And we'd all overeat, probably most of us. And after we ate, Harlan would go into the front room, lay down on the floor, and go to sleep. That was every Thanksgiving. Well, the grandkids then, Hillary and Bailey and Kristen and Danica and April and Lucas were all little, and their kids were there. And when he'd go to sleep, they'd go in and tease him, and they'd do stuff to his face and tease him, and they'd kind of wake him up, and he was, fighting flies and things all the time. So they had a good time with him, and he always, probably every time he approached them, I want you to remember, I'm your worst nightmare. That was his always thing, I'm your worst nightmare. And today, he still is. And of course, at Thanksgiving, as I say, they always came over, and Aunt Charlotte always brought a big bundle of rolls, and that was one of the things. And one of the things, I might go back to the beginning, I think he was a little hesitant in accepting me because to them, I really talked funny. Now, I thought it was natural. I thought, Ewan's talk funny, not me. And I think it took him a little while to get over that I had this weird way of talking, I guess, and saying my words. But anyhow, he got over it, and we became really good friends, really like brothers. One of the things I remember, he talked to me quite a bit about this, and I don't know if he did to many people or not, but his time in Vietnam. He spoke to me on lots of occasions about that, his experiences there, and of course his serving, and the big thing is the way that they were treated when they came home. That was one of the most crushing things that ever happened to him. He just, I don't know, that was on his mind a lot, I guess. And something like that you would never get over. To come home, you served your company, and you walk on your own soul, and somebody spits in your face. No, that's not good. But we talked about that a lot. We had a lot of things in common. We both were very interested in our communities. And we talked about things for the communities, how we could maybe help do things better, make our surroundings better, make our county better. And we talked politics a little bit, not outside of he and I, just the two of us. So we had a lot of things in common. And like I say, I already had 5 brothers, but he was like a brother to me. We had a lot of respect for each other, a lot of love for each other. And I can always say that, as you can see, and the comments that have been made in the press and on, he was very well respected and always will be. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Jeremy Corwin, and it is so wonderful to see the family here. I knew Harlan here at the church, but more importantly, Harlan was a very good friend of my dad's, and my dad passed away a couple years ago. And what's really neat for me to see the family, because I haven't really met the kids, but to see the spirit of Harlan in these kids. I mean, just the character and just who they are. You see so much of Harlan, and it's just really wonderful to see. Harlan was always asking me about my dad, and my kids whenever we would be around, and he was always smiling. I think one of the years, or several years, I regretted not being around when he and John Wiley and Warren Hall were at Hall's Drugs. I just can't imagine what a crazy place that was with those guys there. That's like the Three Stooges. So, but they were always just a lot of fun. And, someone talked about going on a fishing trip with Harlan. And Harlan took me and one of my boys fishing. I'm not a fisherman, not at all. And so one of my boys, he was super excited about it. And we spent all day out. We didn't get one bite. But you know what? Harlan made it enjoyable. He's was so fun to be around. But, Harlan would spend a lot of time with my dad at the pool. They were working out, swimming laps, supposedly. But most of the time, they would solve all the problems sitting in the hot tub or the sauna. But Harlan would report to me how my dad was doing. And he'd come and tell me that, hey, your dad struggled a little bit today walking in. You may want to watch out for him. And the thing I will remember about Harlan is we came to church. My dad wasn't doing too well. And Harlan, remember these last years, it was hard for him to move, to come in and to come out. And he worked hard to get into church. And we saw him, and he said, how's your dad doing? And I said, well, he's in the hospital. It doesn't look good. And Harlan walked right out and went and visited my dad. And that was special to me because it was important to him to be in relationship with people. And that's just who Harlan was. He was always in relationship with people. So you guys had something special with Harlan.
Some of you may or may not know me, but I am part of the Harlan family in a roundabout way. I showed up here today thinking I could sit and watch and listen, but a couple of family members asked me to speak, and I first thought was the story Jerry said. I remember Harlan sleeping on the floor all the time, and I was kind of jealous that I never got to do that, but maybe I can do that sometime. And I think I shared this with Marshall. I met Harlan when I was 17 years old when he was working at Safeway. And who would know 10 years later that I would become part of that family? But what I remember most about that day is other than when he came to you, he had that smile, and you knew he was mischief and something was going on, that he taught you a lesson no matter where you were at, whether you were 17 or you were 27. And one of the funny ones he taught me, Sean and I got married, like I said, when I was 27, and he always had that mischief smile. And I still remember him coming to my office, and he said, I want you to try this when you go out to dinner with your wife sometime and she wants to have dessert. Just kind of reach over and say, what can I get for you, my plump little chickadee? And Sean's laughing, remembers that. And I don't know if Charlotte, if he did that to you or not. He shared he did. And the lesson was you're probably going to save some money or you're going to get hurt. So I don't know whatever worked out. But I still remember that to this day, that we would run and we'd bring that story up even later this time. But he loved everybody. That's the thing I remember most. Whether you were part of his family, you were just loved. He wore his heart on his sleeve. He would come in my office. If I'd have known I was speaking, I probably wore the pink shirt because he would come to the college and speak and do some stuff, and the pink shirt was his deal. But he was the most giving, caring man that I know. He loved all of you. He spoke very highly of his kids. He was there for the whole time. But he also loved everybody else, even though not in the family, outside the family. How are your kids doing? How's Christian? How's Bailey? Every time you saw him, it wasn't about, hey, I'm the mayor of Centralia. Never did he talk about himself that way. And I think that's what his legacy will pass on. And my first thought today when I walked in, I feel very blessed to know him, but I know that the heavens got a good man today, or 18th. It's just something, I'm a little sad that, and you'd love to see, we do an STP event at the college, and when he moved to Texas, Bob, I'm moving to Texas. I'm not going to be able to come at 3 a.m. and do your breakfast. Even to this last July, which we canceled STP, he still texted me and said, are you having STP? So he always cared. Whether you talked to him or not, you were always in his thoughts. And that's what I'll always remember about him. When you're having a bad day, think about what he can bring to your heart. and that's Harlan what he does. So I could go on, but everybody said way more than I thought you would say, and the speech you guys gave today really speaks of a man that you all should be proud of. He'll always be part of your life. When you're having a bad day, he's going to reach down to you and help you through those moments. And I can't say enough about just a caring, loving man. And some of us should strive to do that. When you're having those days, you got to think about how he was. He did not think he was the best thing out there. He was more proud of his family and the people around him. So got a little emotional, wasn't expecting to speak, but I'm glad I got to share the story about what can I do for my plump little chickadee. So if you want to help yourself, and I'm sure he's laughing up there, Bob, I know that's going to get you in trouble, but now I got to share it, Harlan, and I'll never forget that. But when you leave today, say a prayer for him. He'll say a prayer for you, and I just ask that you keep him in your heart and keep the family in your heart, because you guys all mean a lot to us. And it's sad when these things bring us together, but it sure makes it real when you see each other and how much he was loved by everybody. And I just thank you for giving me the time to say a few words, and I appreciate that. So God bless everybody, and have a blessed day.
Well, if you are able, would you please stand and receive the benediction, and then I'll pray and dismiss you. Yeah. Now, let me say this first. It's from Hebrews 13, verses 20 through 21. Now, may the God of peace, who brought up our Lord Jesus from the dead, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. Father, we love you, and we thank you for Harlan. We thank you for, Lord, just his example to us, his fun spirit, his faith. And Lord, I thank you for his family. And it does appear that much of his character has been passed down to his kids. And we just pray that you would encourage them as they continue to grieve. And in the process, Lord, help them to trust you more and just come together with one another. So we thank you. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, the family would really like for you to join them for some light refreshments in the fellowship hall. So please stick around and encourage